Well, I'm not an international lawyer, so I think the question of international law would actually probably left for the lawyers. What I can analyze is the Israelis found an opportunity now. They have been saying for almost 20 years that if the Iranians got a hold of nuclear weapon, they probably would use it against Israel because the foundation myth of the Islamic Republic is death to Israel, death to America, and they can't gamble with that. That's sort of their view, their analysis. The second opportunity, of course, emerged is the uh, President Trump in the White House in the last 6 months. That again, they couldn't have done that under a democratic administration. Thirdly, although they've been building up their intelligence and their agents inside Iran, it is the circumstances that what happened when Hamas attacked them in 7th of October 2023. They would see some kind of sympathy in public opinion, sympathy within Israel itself, and as the war sort of dragged on, they managed to eliminate a danger of a closer Iranian response, like Hezbollah, later Hezbollah. The regime in Syria, which was pro Iran, has fallen, and the Houthis, to a certain extent, are not as strong as they used to be. Uh, and if the intelligence was actually correct that Iran was only a whisker away from uh, getting weaponizing some kind of nuclear device, that's the justification. Where international law stands, as I said, I'm not an international lawyer, but that open to discussion. Well, I think that's exactly that within this question is actually fear that here in Britain, fear of escalation. I mean, obviously, Britain does not want it to see any escalation because of British interests in the region, because of the oil and gas prices, which is quite a problem here, because energy is quite a big problem in UK. So when there was some kind of discussion within the Iranian circles that they're going to actually target any Western country that appear to be in support of Israel. So, as a precaution, the prime minister decided to send some assets to the Typhoon aircraft to beef up the British sort of RAF forces there, just in case the British interest or French interest came under attack. And obviously, because if such thing happen, then questions will be asked why the government not why the government did not actually take or being prepared for such eventuality. Well, I should hope so. I mean, it showed that when the RAF participated with the American Air Force to protect shipping in the south of the Red Sea when the Houthis were firing missiles there. So the RAF Typhoons took off from the Akwatiri Air Base, which is in Cyprus. And that's quite a long way. They needed mid-air refueling there, but that was sort of a full run. Whether there are actually other bases that the Britain can operate from in the area is actually doubtful, but it can actually use some allies' airfields. Again, there is a battle group with an aircraft carrier going to the South the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. So again, whether these assets can be used or not. But again, this is sort of defensive preparation, not really any plans to take part in any operation there against anybody. Well, this is exactly the question which probably the G7 meeting are waiting. I mean, there was a communique like Japan and others nations wanted to come straight out in condemnation of Israel and said this is a violation of international law, but the Americans probably won't want to have it. But here, we will see whether what are actually the Israeli aims. I mean, so far, if Benjamin Netanyahu government have the aims within sort of defensive, i.e., eliminating danger from Iran of using weapons of mass destruction, bombs, producing nuclear weapons, etc. That's probably might be sort of acceptable to the majority. However, once you go a step further and put a political aims, that's really probably Israeli public themselves might disagree with, like if it's calling for regime change, might be desirable from an Israeli electorate point of view. However, it's none of Israeli business who actually ruled Iran. So that's going step that far would actually lose Benjamin Netanyahu not only international support but national support within Israel itself. But if you actually limit it only to military target, then perhaps there could be some kind of justification within public opinion. Yeah, I didn't mention correlation. I said a general public opinion of actually within the region. Certainly within the region and within worldwide, a desire for Iran not to acquire nuclear weapons. There's also the groups that were supported by Iran, like the Houthis, like Hezbollah, like Hamas, and so on. Uh, not everyone in the region. They might get sympathy within certain trends within public opinion, but not certainly not governments, because the governments prefer to work with governments. But again, when we saw the last exchange of missiles between Israel and Iran last October in 2024, uh, every country in the region was shooting these missiles down. I think this time is slightly different. People will only, like Jordanians, will only shoot missiles over their own airspace, fearing for their own population. But unless Israel actually asks for help and some kind of justification, that say for example, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, if Israel asks for military help, Keir Starmer cannot really just go there and provide it. He has to answer to Parliament, the House of Commons, where I'm based, where I actually look upon MPs from the press gallery. He has to answer questions. What is the justification for that? So that's actually what I meant. Unless the democratically elected government can justify it to the parliaments and the public, then nobody's going to participate, in my opinion. Yes, I mean, this is another question which I was going to come to, because we were talking about Israel, what the end game is, which is not clear. Iran, perhaps, is are very proud, the Iranians, a proud leadership. They don't want to be exposed in front of the people, especially that we've seen in the last few years, especially among young people, some kind of opposition to hijab and opposition to strict rules and so on. If the Iranians can send a diplomatic message behind closed door, not in public, to the Americans that if they pressurize the Israelis so the Iranians can actually cooperate and start talks. And most probably then President Trump would try to get the two sides together, maybe not directly, but some kind of a deal that let Iran allow the atomic energy inspectors or a third party or the six that were involved in the old deal come and inspect the facilities to make sure uh, uh, there's no weapons grade uranium that's being produced. Then that's perhaps can be done. But I don't think it's actually happening in public. I don't think President Trump is going to say, "Well, you two can come together and do it." I think it's only if some kind of a secret message reached via a third party from Tehran to Washington, that's perhaps we can see an American role there playing something positive of ending this fighting. Well, I think the two are linked together. I mean, the old agreement, which involved the European Union, the superpowers, China, and so on, was you can develop some kind of use for medical research and so on, but not for weapons. And you've seen countries in the region, especially on the western side of the Gulf, the Arab side of the Gulf, they were saying we've been left out. We need some kind of an agreement that would curtail Iran's expansionist influence. And what they meant Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis. And I think most probably, given that Trump was in the regional visit to the Gulf and the American interest there, then perhaps the two will be linked together. But I think if the Iranians again show some kind of a positive signal saying that they will not sort of interfere in other countries' business, will not support these groups in the past and concentrate on economic and trade deal and so on, that's perhaps this kind of positive signal might actually sway the Americans to pressurize the Israelis more. Let's not forget that President Trump is a businessman and he wants to see peace through making economic deal. Yeah, and I think that's probably a good opportunity for Iran to do so.